Ladies and gentlemen, before we hop into today's episode of the podcast, I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by my good friends over at David Protein. I'm just going to speak from the heart here. David Protein, I have consumed their bars almost daily since I was first discovered them in November of 2024. They're absolutely delicious. They're 28 grams of protein, only 150 calories, 0 grams of sugar, and gluten-free. I can't believe a product like this exists, quite frankly, and studies have shown that 30 to 50% of people don't get enough adequate protein in their daily lives. I've tried a lot of protein bars. Most are chalky, overly processed, and full of junk. David bars, a different story entirely. Head over to davidprotein.com to check out the full list of bars. These have been a massive game changer in my ability to up my protein, recover better, and then hit training even harder the next day. Head over to davidprotein.com and see why I'm raving about this product currently. And without further ado, enjoy today's episode of the podcast.
My vision, my goal, my dream within the sport of triathlon is to use this sport as a platform to make a difference in the lives of cancer patients and in the lives of cancer research. And so really using the sport as a way to make a difference in the lives of healthcare, and particularly, these really, really challenging diseases, is really what gets me through, because I know that as bad as my day is, a cancer patient's day is way worse. And they're going through way more than I am, and hopefully more than what I will ever have to imagine.
That's Matthew Marquardt. Today on the Running Effect podcast, I have the privilege of sitting down with one of the top-ranked Ironman athletes in the world who devotes his life not just to the sport of Ironman, but also on the side is a full-time medical student or studying to become a doctor, specifically with a passion of cancer research at The Ohio State University. Matthew has a wildly unconventional path to the sport of Ironmanning. I don't know how you would say it. Maybe not wildly unconventional because he had a background in swim when he went to Princeton. But for me as a runner and hosting a running podcast, his story to get as good as he is today is quite honestly remarkable. It was so inspiring to hear about how kind of what was a passion turned into this thing that he realized he was wildly good at. And since then, really taking it up on a daily basis and getting up at 4 a.m. To do his shift at his medical school, while also getting in 2 sessions a day and training 25 to 30 hours a week, trying to now be one of the best in the world. I was thoroughly inspired by the dedication, the mindset, and the wisdom of Matthew, and I know you guys will be blessed by it as well. If you enjoy it, share it with a friend, a family member, a teammate, someone who you think would find value and benefit from it. Give us a 5-star review. It takes 3 to 5 seconds to do, and hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And without further ado, enjoy this insightful, inspiring conversation with the one and only Matthew Marquardt. Matthew Marquardt, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Really good. Thanks for having me on.
I would have buddies in high school or even buddies presently, and sometimes they talk about their sibling significant other, a man by the name of Eric Board, who I have to give a shout out because he was a great training buddy way back in the day, and we raced each other growing up. He always talked about his sister's boyfriend, and I always thought, okay, like, he doesn't seem like that much. And then throughout the years, I think he got a little better at Ironman, and then slowly you started winning some things, and I was like, this guy's legit. And I remember for years Eric would always be like, you should get him on the podcast. And I think a lot of times things just happen when they're supposed to. And he texted me last week and told me about you winning the Lake Placid Ironman or whatever it was called. And so I was like, okay, I should get this guy on now before he fully takes over the world. So I followed your progression and career in a unique way from afar. And it's been cool to hear, the crazy story of how you run these crazy times and win these events with a way crazier life than most. So first off, congratulations. Second off, it's an honor to welcome you on, and I can't wait to uncover your story today.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's I always love doing any sort of podcast, and like Eric's obviously been a great supporter, and just super excited that we were able to connect.
Has he ever taken you into the depths of the pain cave on Farnsworth for a long run?
No, not yet. Not yet. I generally stick to my own workout. So we've done like some long runs together, but they're generally when I do easy ones. So he hasn't really had the opportunity to really kind of try and push me in the way it sounds like he has pushed you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Back in high school, well, just in the summer, it was very much like a base phase. So the only runs I would really push when I wasn't doing workouts were like the weekend long run. And as you
Yep.
know, in the Midwest now, it gets so hot and humid in the morning. I feel like people in other parts of the country aren't aware of that. And we would just like rip 13 or 14-mile long runs, but he was always a year or two like ahead of me in terms of fitness level. And so, yes, I attribute much summer fitness to Eric Board over the years. I guess for you, you're a full-time medical student at Ohio State. You kind of have an unorthodox, entry into the Ironman world. You have a background as a swimmer. Why Ironman? What's special about this event to you?
Yeah, so I think like one of the coolest things about my story is that like I never intended to be where I am today, which I think is what's been so awesome is that in I swam in college, swam at Princeton. I graduated 2021, which was obviously the height of the pandemic, and I very much believe in like when one door closes, another door opens, and so my senior year, like our swim season was canceled. And for the first time in my life, swimmers, like we train like, I don't know, 48 weeks out of the year, 49 weeks out of the year. And so we never really have like a big gap to do something. But here I am, my senior year of college. I didn't have my senior swim season. And I'm like, you know what? Like I actually finally for once in my life have a month period during winter break where I don't have to do anything. I have zero commitments. Like there's no swim training. Yes, I need to work on my senior thesis, but I can push that off. And like there was no classes during that time. And so I was like, I don't know how many times I'm going to have this opportunity. I'm going to med school next year. And so I decided to bike across the US, as one does. And so in December/January of 2021, well, I guess December 2020, January 2021, I biked across the U.S. in 20 days. I biked from San Diego, California to Jacksonville, Florida. And that's really where this whole thing started, because it became clear that I had this like engine, and to be able to do long things. Like you would think over the course of 20 days, you would get weaker and you'd get like, more tired as you went. But I actually got stronger. Like I started out doing like 100 miles a day. And then by the end of it, I was doing like 130 to 160 miles a day. And just over a short span of time. And so when I finished that, I was like, well, what do I do now? Like I have a whole semester. I don't have swimming. And so then I signed up for my first half. And again, only intended to do like this was my first. I was only intending on doing one because I was like, I'm starting med school in the fall. Like, no one has time to do anything in med school except for study. And like, and so I did that one, qualified for half Ironman world champs as an age grouper. And that was 6 weeks into med school. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to train for it. And like, that'll be it. Like, I can handle 6 weeks of doing both. And like it's early enough in the year, school won't really be that hard. At that point, like it'll be fine. So I did that, and then I ended up getting second in my age group, which was obviously good, but I was still really far away from the pros, and there wasn't like this indication that I was going to be where I am today. And so at that point, I had to make this decision: like, do I, dive in and try triathlon more, like really do like a full season and see where I go, or do I just take the traditional path and do med school and only do that? And after talking to a bunch of mentors and whatnot, the consensus was like, hey, like you should give this a shot because like there's only been one thing that has ever been predictive of future success in medicine, and that's being really successful at something other than medicine first. And because like it's basically like if you know how to become the best writer or the best athlete or the best musician, the foundational skills that it takes to become really good at medicine. You know how to handle failure, you know how to continually improve, you know how to look for that next level, you know how to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. And so they're like, basically the consensus was like, give this a try, and things will work out from a medicine side of things if you do. And so then I took the leap, and one season has led to another, and I never really thought that I was going to get this far, and just feel super grateful that I've had the journey that I've had.
Obviously, this is a running podcast, but I have friends who swam growing up. I'm friends with a girl who swims for South Carolina now, so she's really, really good. And I know other people kind of in that world. I actually raced against a kid. I don't think Eric would have ever raced against him, but in like 7th grade,
Mm-hmm.
ran in middle school just for fun on top of
Yep.
swim season to stay in shape.
Yep.
And he went on to be the #1 swim recruit in the country his senior year of high school. He went to Florida. All that being said, because I have some awareness of the sport and I want to give context to, I'm sure, a lot of listeners who don't, swimming is brutal. And I think runners train hard, but you can only train, you know this, you can only train so much before your body physically breaks down. Whereas swimming, I hear these crazy stories of like 5 a.m. practice and then you come back in the pool and you swim for 2 hours. Do you feel like that gave you kind of the body of work ethic to be able to have the output in the crazy schedule you do presently?
Yeah, no, it totally did, because the way I've described it is, college was really hard. I was a chemistry major, pre-med, Division I athlete, and
At Princeton, by the way.
yeah, at Princeton. And so
Not a
college
bad
was
school.
really hard, but I learned how to manage it all. We were doing 20 hours a week, and then I would put in extra time too. So I was probably logging 25 hours a week plus really, really challenging academics. And medical school has been challenging, but but I would say it was on par with what I did in college. Like, I don't really feel like it's been that much different. And so, like, I came into med school basically like with this foundation of my entire life. I've done like 2-a-days every single day, and I've also been a top level student. And so it really hasn't been that much of a transition in terms of like balancing both of them. Um, and yeah, like, I think the aerobic base that I got from swimming, over and over and over again, has really kind of enabled me to have a super fast rise in the sport. And I think, like, the other important thing is I did run in high school. I was a multi-sport athlete. I did track, I did cross country, I did lacrosse, I did soccer. And because I wanted to do the cross training and it kept it fun. And my senior year, I'd run 4 miles to school. I'd put my backpack in the car. My brother was a year younger than me, so he'd drive this car to school. I'd run the 4.5 miles to school, and that would be like my run. And then, take a shower, go to class, and then in the afternoon I'd go swim. And so I guess in many regards that was like the foundation to all of this. And in college as well, like, especially during the off season, I would swim and run. And biking is very easy. People either get into triathlon from a running background or from a swimming background. It's very rare that someone comes into triathlon from a cycling background. But yeah, like, I kind of had all of the elements when I started, and it's just been really about translating those former experiences and that base into the sport of triathlon. And I think that's been a big part of the reason why I've had such a fast rise in the sport.
I think this is bled through in this conversation, but you obviously care about academics, and what you're doing in that world. Studying chemistry at Princeton is no small feat. I think a lot of the runners I talk to, for better or for worse, you get the, like, I'm studying communications at NAU and I went to NAU because I know that I can just live like a full-time professional athlete.
Right.
Take me through some of your background, between being invested in what your academics have looked like and how that's led to being in med school and doing cancer research, and ultimately where you want to be one day. Why is that important to you? Specifically now that you've probably gotten good enough where I'm sure people have come to you and been like, just do this full time, bro. But it's clear that you are equally, if not more, passionate about your medical work.
Yeah, it's a super important question. And, I think for me, I have a philosophy of, if you want to be elite in one thing in your life, you need to be elite in all aspects of your life. And just kind of growing up, academics was really important for me. Like, very big emphasis in my family. And I chose Princeton because I believed that I could do academics. I didn't feel like you had to sacrifice one for the other. I felt like, if you go to the right place, you can do both academics and athletics at a super high level. And I think for the most part that's true. There, it's not entirely true, but I think especially in medical school, what we've seen is that it actually can be really valuable to do stuff outside of your sport, because when you're a pro athlete, um, it's like, what do you do with your time when you're not training? Like, yeah, like you might be taking a nap, you might be doing recovery, but you also might be like fixated on your workout, like what went well, what didn't go well. Um, and so it can very quickly become all encompassing. And I think that can be, I think that can be negative. Like for me, it's like I finish my bike workout and probably within 5 minutes, I've basically forgotten what happened and I'm on to the next thing. And, I have a coach and I have a really great relationship with my coach. And he's the one that does the analysis and the thinking. Like I'll give him high level thoughts of like, this workout went well, or this workout didn't go well. I'm feeling this way or that way, but he's really the one that puts together the plan. And I have full trust in him. Like I do very little because I don't want to spend the mental bandwidth on figuring out my training. I just want to do. And I think that's been super, super valuable, because it's like, and the other thing too is like when you don't have all day, it's like you don't procrastinate to do your workout. Like it doesn't take you 4 hours to do a 2 hour workout because you're like on the couch trying to be like, oh, like I don't want to do it. It's like all right, it's like I have 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. to do this, and if I start late, then I'm not getting the full workout in. And I think that's like been really, really valuable and really actually productive, because medicine to me provides me with an escape from triathlon and an ability to recover from triathlon. And triathlon provides me an ability to recover and recharge from medicine. And so there's many things that are very counterintuitive about the relationship. And at a surface level, you'd think would be contradictory, but actually, if you do it right, can actually be really, really valuable. And I would say the other thing is triathlon's a really hard sport. And like when you're racing, you're pushing yourself to your absolute limit. And, like in running, you get that too a little bit. Like you have, people that collapse like 5 meters before the finish line. Like in triathlon, like people collapse at the finish line, people throw up at the finish line, like people throw up during the run. Like you're putting yourself like at your limit, if not beyond. And it's really hard to do that if you're only doing it for yourself. Um, and that's one of the things that I've found super powerful in terms of having a purpose greater than triathlon, having this focus of, okay, I'm eventually going to be a doctor. I really care about cancer research and improving the lives of cancer patients. That thinking about those things are what help me get through the days when I don't want to do it. Like when I come home at 6 o'clock and I have an hour and a half or 2 hour bike ride left, like I'm exhausted from the day. I've been up since 4. It's like thinking of stuff like that and like the commitment that I have to that cause. That's what really gets me like through those times. And I think like has such incredible motivational power. So yeah.
For you, what's the equivalent within medicine of like winning an Ironman? Like, what are your goals within medicine? What are you trying to accomplish?
It's so hard. Like, I think like one of the challenges of medicine is, and I've asked this before, is like, you know, what determines success in medicine? Like, how do you differentiate a good surgeon from a great surgeon? And there's, you if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. But I think at the end of the day, it's being able to look back on my career, kind of whenever that is, and be able to really say that you had an impact on people, that you made their lives better, or you helped alleviate the suffering that they had, in their final days, or whatever, or in their darkest moments. And I think like really just having a patient centric focus is really what defines success. And I'd love to have just as big of an impact on individual lives as possible. I think that's kind of, and obviously that's very intangible. Like you can't really measure it, which is kind of challenging. But I think, that is the ultimate goal. And then obviously, then there's all these accolades and stuff that you can get as well. But, it's about the process more so than the end result is what really matters. Like same thing, like with triathlon, like people ask me all the time, are you going to win this race? Or, what's your goal for the race? And my answer is always like, my goal is to execute and to express the fitness that I've put in. And like, I think if I do that, I'll get a good result. But the goal is never to win. The goal is to do as well as possible. And if that means that a win is the result, then that's obviously awesome. But so, yeah, so it's like, that's my answer.
Have you read When Breath Becomes Air?
Yeah. I mean,
what's your take on it?
Books like When Breath Becomes Air and a bunch of the Atul Gawande books as well were part of the reason why I switched into medicine, because I was originally going down the path of like renewable energy, climate change, stuff like that. But what I realized is that in the world of business, you do a lot of, like, you just don't perform as much as you do as an athlete. Whereas in medicine, you have to perform every single day. Someone's life is in your hands every single day. And the idea of being able to express your training and express your skills every day in a way that like actually matters was something that really pulled me into medicine. And, I think like a book like When Breath Becomes Air, it's been a couple years since I read it, but like, it's just like, you never know what's going to happen. Like it's not really just about living without regrets. It's living life to the fullest, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And like, in that book, you have a guy that's like neurosurgeon, does all these years of training. And then like basically right when he becomes what I call a full doctor, he graduates residency or fellowship, he has this terminal, he has a terminal cancer diagnosis. And like, that happens to people. And like, obviously it's rare, but like, if you don't appreciate the journey and what you're doing day in, day out, then it's like, what are you doing? Like, I always say that once you graduate college, everything's optional. Like, like, yes, I'm in medical school right now. Or yes, like, when I'm in residency, I'll have a job. But like at the end of the day, if I wanted to just drop it all and do something else, there's very little like holding me here. So like, if I'm not enjoying it, and enjoy doesn't mean that you're happy every day. It doesn't mean that you're like, oh, this is the best thing in the world. Like there's going to be discomfort, but like fulfillment is what you're going for, satisfaction, not necessarily happiness. I think people think happy means that you're smiling all the time. But what I want is I want to have an impact on people's lives and to get better and to improve myself and to improve the world. And I think, that's part of the reason why I love both medicine and triathlon, is that there's the ability to do both. Yeah.
You mentioned that moment of realizing you had this kind of insane engine. Bridge the gap between that moment backed with like legitimate times where you're like, oh shoot, like that I should probably take this somewhere.
Yeah, so I think like the moment that sticks in my mind the most is I did Ironman Texas in 2022. That was my first full distance Ironman, and this was kind of 6 months or so after I basically made the decision to let's just see what happens. Like I had done the half Ironman World Championships, and I was like, you know what? Let's just give it a year. Let's do triathlon for a year. Give it a good go and see what happens. And if it's promising, then I'll continue. But if it's like clear that like, hey, I'm just going to be like a good age grouper or like a middle of the pack pro, then maybe I would call it quits. But so kind of throughout winter, like January to March 2022, training had gone really well. I was really happy with things, and was optimistic that Ironman Texas would go well. But like, I hadn't done a race before and didn't really have that race result to really show it. And so all of my classmates thought that I was full of baloney. And like I tried to keep it low key, didn't want to make a big deal about it because like, I just didn't really feel like it was an important thing to harp on in terms of like that I was doing this Ironman. But obviously people learn because like you're not going out or, you're doing a workout before class or whatever. But anyways, at Ironman Texas, there was a moment where I ended up winning that race. I won the overall age group title in that race out of 2,500 people by 23 minutes, and I won my age group by over an hour. And I got 10th among the pros. Like this is basically like 6 months after I started doing it. And during the run, there was a moment that I was going faster than pace, but I was feeling really good, and so I was confident that I was making the right decision. And my coach is like on the other side of there's like a canal during the run, and this is like early in the marathon. It's like mile 8 or so, and I think our pace, the goal was to go like 6:45 to 7-minute pace, something like that. And and he was like, basically like across the canal, he yells like watch your pace, like don't go too fast. And I yell back, I'm like, it's hard to go slow. Because like I was feeling well, and I did end up running a really good marathon, and it all worked out. But like I think that moment of like doing that race and really, not to sound arrogant, but not just winning but dominating the field, like 23 minutes is a huge gap.
Yeah, you were home and showered by the time second place was
Yeah,
in.
exactly. And I think that was like a key moment in terms of realizing that like, hey, there's definitely potential here for sure. And then the next race, which was 3 months, I think, was even more telling in that race at Lake Placid. This was Lake Placid in 2022. I raced as an age grouper again, even though I'd qualified to race as a pro, and super hilly course. Like it's about 12 to 1400. The version of that course that year was about 12 to 1400 feet of elevation gain over a marathon. And the fastest pro ran 2:46, I think. I ran the second fastest time of anyone, and I was 2:52. And I won the overall title by 50 minutes, by 50 minutes. And I got fourth among the pros. And so like that moment was really when it was like, okay, like you have potential to like do something in this sport. And like you have a future. And that's really when I would say that like I fully bought into doing kind of both, because at that point too, I'd been a year into med school and knew that I could handle both the training and school, and do well at both.
What was it like to win your first Ironman? Now you're winning these races. How full circle is that? And do you still feel like kind of a rookie in the sport? And if so, what do you think will take you to that next level?
Yeah, so my first pro win. So I had a bunch of wins as an age grouper, but they always felt it was obviously a huge accomplishment, but they never felt full in that like there were pros that went faster than me. And so like I'm very proud of those wins, but there was still never quite the same. There was this urge of like, oh, there is another level. Like, yeah, I did well, but there's another level. And so Ironman Cairns in Australia about a month ago was my first pro win. And over the 2 years prior, I had like 6 podiums. So I had been second or third 6 times, and you only race a couple times a year. Like a heavy racing schedule is 5 times a year. And so I had a lot of close calls. And like these races were like, I had gotten second or third and been like a minute down from the winner, or, less than 4 minutes down from the winner, which is really close in the world of Ironman. And so like there was this, there is a sense of like when's the win going to come? Like I've been close so many times. Like, do I have the ability to get a win done? And I didn't know. And so when I took the lead at Ironman Cairns with about 6 or 7 miles to go in the run, it was simultaneously like you can do this, but also like, don't mess this up. And in the sense of like, it's not going to be an actual win until you get across the finish line, which is obviously true. But I think winning was just an incredible like relief, but also like an incredible high in that, like, wow, I did this. Wow, I was the fastest guy. Kind of the culmination of all these years of hard work, having that payoff. And so it's like, it's a really incredible feeling, for sure. But you're also like not necessarily in the best state of mind when you cross the finish line after an Ironman. So I don't think that you ever really fully appreciate it. But it's pretty awesome. And Lake Placid, I think it was a little bit longer. Well, it was about the same amount of time that I passed for the win. And it's just really special. And I think like I try to cherish it as much as I can, but I feel like you never can fully really cherish it to the absolute most, because it's so transient. Like, you get a couple minutes, basically, where like the final mile into the finish line, and then the minutes after you finish, are kind of where you're at like the highest of the high. And not that it goes away and then there's nothing, but it's an absolutely incredible feeling, especially when there's been so much that's gone into that moment.
I feel like I don't really know Ironman that well, so you'd have to inform me, but I feel like I don't really hear of people closing these races as fast as you are. 2:39 closing marathon is batshit crazy, pardon my French. Does that shock you that you're that good at running with your background being in swimming?
Yeah, so my story in running has been like a really interesting one, because I would say when I started triathlon, running was my weakest leg. Like, obviously the swim was good. I was a pretty strong cyclist. But what's been fascinating is that my coach has always, even from the beginning, felt like my run had the ability to be my strength. And, that's very much proven to be the case in my past two wins, both at Ironman Lake Placid and Ironman Cairns, and where I took over the lead during the run and had either the fastest or like the second fastest run of the day. So that, like, it's been the process of getting there has been super cool. And it's been really fun to see that improvement over time. But I would also say, like, it's also just been interesting in that, like, my coach had this belief in me before I did, in many regards. But that's also kind of been true throughout the whole thing. Like, he saw my potential to get to the level that I was like 4 years ago. And I kind of was always just like, yeah, sure, like, whatever.
Okay, so forgive my ignorance with not knowing Ironman. What are the like big dogs running for the Ironman, and how far are you from that?
Yeah, so it's so hard in Ironman because you're obviously doing a marathon after you've swum 2.4 miles and after you've biked 112. So you've put in, just call it 5 hours of work before you even start the marathon. And so, we're not, so the world record is technically like 2:26 in the marathon. But I would say really the top dogs in the sport are running like 2:30 to 2:34. And really anytime you're sub 2:40 is, you're kind of at like the top level of the sport. And so, both my runs at Ironman Cairns and Ironman Lake Placid were sub 2:40. And the run at Lake Placid was like the third fastest time ever on that course. So, I'm not quite, I haven't done like a 2:34 or anything like that, but I would certainly say I'm within striking distance, especially if I do the bike right. Because like the thing is that like I'm a really strong cyclist, so I ride the bike a little bit harder than someone would who's really good at the run. And so there's this kind of like give and take. You're trying to find the optimal ratio between like going the bike as hard as you can, but also being able to do the run as well as you can.
How'd you make that? I've never seen fireworks.
I don't
know. Making it entertaining for the people watching on YouTube.
I guess so. But yeah, so it's like, it's been really cool to have that progress and definitely be, I would say, within striking distance of being one of the better runners in the sport, has been really cool. But um, so yeah, it's like
What do you, yeah, what do you feel like the next logical step is for you in the sport? What's on your mind? 2 wins now. You kind of breaking through every single year, it seems. What do you feel like is the next thing for you to accomplish or tackle?
Yeah, so I mean, really, like the big thing is the world champs. And so I've got about 7 weeks before Ironman World Championships. This year it's in Nice, France. And and we'll it should be a good race. It's gonna be really deep field this year. And we'll see how it goes. But at the end of the day, like the World Championships is the top of the sport. And last year I was 15th, but I didn't have the most strategic. Didn't really do the race super well. I rode the bike a little too hard and then blew up on the run. And so hopefully, can be within striking distance of those top guys this year. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I think it's one of those things where you have a plan going into the race, and if you're able to execute that plan as you made the plan, then that's amazing. But I feel like almost everyone gets punched in the face at some point. You have to adapt, and that's really kind of what separates the good from the great.
Before we wrap up here, I'm fascinated to hear about what does your training look like and how do you balance that with your, full-time medical student status?
Yeah. So for training, I do at least two workouts every day. I'm training on weekdays 3 to 4 hours, and then on Saturday I often do 5 to 6.5 hours, and it ends up being around, I'd say on average 25 hours a week, kind of hovering between 22 and 30 hours is kind of the range. And do a different sport every session. So if I swim in the morning, then I'm going to bike in the afternoon, or if I run in the morning, maybe I'll swim in the afternoon or bike in the afternoon. So it's really interesting because you can get a lot more volume in than if you can get a lot more cardio volume in than if you're just running alone, because you're doing these other sports that put different stresses on your body. So you still have to be careful with how much you're doing, but I'm only running 40 to 60 miles a week. But I'm doing a lot of other things too that kind of translates over to that. So it kind of all just works out that you get really, really cardiovascularly fit.
How are you eating food? How much food are you consuming these days? And how do you make sure you're fueling with, I'm sure going to classes I'm so unaware of what being a medical student is like that with all the training.
So it's I think one of the things that we've really done is we've really kind of taken a quote unquote team approach, more like what you see with Tour de France cyclists, in that I have my central coach, but then we also have a variety of different experts that we lean on to provide the absolute highest level of expertise in all these different aspects. So I have a nutritionist who creates a plan for what to eat during training as well as kind of outside of training. And it ends up being a lot of carbs, actually a lot more carbs than you would expect, because since I'm doing so much cardio, your body's main source of fuel is carbohydrates. And so you need to make sure during training that you're giving your body enough fuel, and then also that you're giving it enough fuel after the training too, so that it can appropriately recover. And so, yeah, it's definitely not I eat as healthy as I can, but it's a lot more like bread, jam, honey, oatmeal, pancakes type thing than you would necessarily expect, because there's such a focus on carbohydrates and making sure that my body absorbs all of that.
How many calories are you packing down a day?
I'd say it's probably around 4,000 most days. When you do a full Ironman, you burn about 8,000 calories. And so generally, which is basically impossible for your body to fully absorb all of that in a day. So there ends up being a 2 or 3 day rebound after I do an Ironman, where you're just insatiably hungry the whole time, before you finally replete everything and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of food.
After you finish one of these races, are you hungry? And if so, what's the, not cheat meal, but celebration meal to finish?
Yeah. So generally, you get really hungry, call it like 2 hours after the race. And the thing is that during these races, I'm basically just having sugar, like either in liquid form or in gel form, and ended up having about probably 5,000 calories worth of sugar basically during the race. And um, because of like, I think having all of that carbohydrate, but also the stress that you're putting on your body, I personally cannot really have anything except for just more carbohydrates after the race. So it ends up being like have like a Sprite or a Coca-Cola or like gummy bears or something like that. Pancakes are great. But like I really crave something more savory, like a steak.
Mhm.
Um, but I have to like wait like a day before like basically like everything's calmed down enough that I can eat like a higher protein, higher fat type of food without it like just wrecking havoc on my like digestive system.
What is the most unique part of your training that you think would surprise people?
Yeah, really good question. I think, one of the really big surprises to even myself has been how well I have trained even during times when I'm basically doing everything that's against like recommendation for high performance. So, like January to April, I was in rotations, which meant that I was getting up at 4, would be in the hospital by like 6:30 or 7, would be on my feet all day. I wouldn't have as much access to food, so like I was eating. There were larger periods of time between when I was eating than normal. And the thing is that was actually, and then I'd get home at like 6 and then have to do another workout. And then I'd only get like 6 hours of sleep a night or 7 hours of sleep instead of, the 8 or 9 that an athlete should get, or even the 10 that an athlete should get. But like, despite all of that, I had some of my best training ever. And so I think like, I'm a huge advocate. I'm not saying that like everyone should just start sleep depriving themselves and not eating, but I think like there's so much to performance that you can still perform really well, even if things aren't necessarily perfect. And so, like, it's more about the consistency in managing your load more so than it is necessarily about doing every single little thing right. And yeah, so that was just like a huge learning for me and a huge surprise. But it's really that consistency, putting good workouts every day together instead of having one really great workout and then a bunch of really bad workouts. Like it's the good workouts over time and over time that really leads to greatness more so than just like one really great workout.
I also think our bodies are just so adaptable. Not saying everyone should go out and sleep for 5 hours a night, but if you had to for a week, you could probably still get some solid training in. I
Right.
think it's crazy how much our bodies adapt. I'm curious as we start to wrap up this conversation, what would you say is the biggest thing that motivates you? Or like what's your driving force when you wake up at 4 and you're exhausted and you don't really want to hit the swim?
Yeah, so for me, it's my vision, my goal, my dream within the sport of triathlon is to use this sport as a platform to make a difference in the lives of cancer patients and in the lives of cancer research. And so, really using the sport as a way to make a difference in the lives of healthcare, and particularly, these really, really challenging diseases, is really what gets me through because I know that as bad as my day is, a cancer patient's day is way worse. And they're going through way more than I am, and hopefully more than what I will ever have to imagine. And so that's really what kind of gets me through it and motivates me to do the things when I, would much rather watch TV or just go to bed. Is kind of having that impact and in making the world a little bit better.
I love it. Matthew, final serious question for you. For those who have listened to the conversation today or inspired by you and your story, what's the final takeaway message that you want to leave with them?
I think the final takeaway is that um, you're never going to know what's going to happen unless you try it. And the worst thing that can happen, barring an injury or something, if you try something, is that you just end up doing what you did before. Like always ask a question because the worst someone can say is no. If you're thinking about doing X or Y, like just give it a shot because like if you do it and it doesn't go well, well then you just go back to the life that you were living before, but it could unlock this new door, this new journey that will take you on a way that you never ever expected was possible. But also at the same time, like looking back, you couldn't imagine making a different decision. So just give it a try and see where it takes you, because you never know what will happen.
Matthew, final question. The question I ask every guest on every single podcast. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
What would I make for him?
Yes, you're cooking for Gordon.
Let's see here. So I'm a huge fan of sous videing, which is when you put meat in a bag and you put it in water and then you cook it for a really long period of time. And so I love a 24-hour brisket, because you basically cook it for long enough that it just falls apart. So I would probably make that with, I have like this sweet potato recipe that I think is really good and goes along with it. And then probably some asparagus for the vegetable, is what I would do.
I love it. Matthew, thank you for the time today. Thank you for enlightening and sharing your story with me and all the insights and wisdom that came with it. Rooting for you. And there's going to be a lot to recap, I'm sure, a year from now. So you'll be back on the podcast in no time. Keep crushing it, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate talking to you.